I finished 10 books and gave up on 3 during the month of January, and frankly, I had a really, really good time. So we're going to go from the worst to the best ones, and you're going to see the worst ones are not awful. And even a few of them, I think I'm just not the target audience. So let's get to it. The worst book I read in January, you've definitely heard of it because I've seen it everywhere, and it is The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. I listened to it as an audiobook, which frankly is the only reason I finished it. I gave it 2.5 star, which is not awful. I feel like I've seen a lot of people give it 5 star, and then I've seen a lot of people put it in their worst books of the year. And frankly, it leaves me feeling confused because why is my question for both extremes? Because it wasn't great, but at the same time, if that's the worst book you've read, you must have had a fantastic year last year, because I read some straight up offensive books and this was not included in that list. To me, this was like a very mediocre, a little forgettable, kind of Hallmark movie-esque kind of book with a little bit of spice. I could summarize it as being just a little bit boring. You have this woman who's trying to find herself. Her aunt leaves her this cafe in a small town. She goes there, falls in love, makes friends, which frankly is perfect as a fun audiobook. You just want something cozy. I just wish there had been a little bit more. It's hard to tell. Sometimes like cozy books work for you or they don't, and unfortunately this one was just not good enough. Otherwise I would have continued. I've heard that it gets better, but I don't think it's going to be enough for me, which sucks because again the covers are really, really cute and I kind of get the appeal, but I don't think I will be continuing. But yeah, it was fine. It was fine. 4.5 star. I gave 3 books 3 star, and the first one is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. I also listened to that one as an audiobook because this is my 3rd book in the Secret Project series. They're not really series, they're standalone, but I'm still considering them a series, and all of them were kind of mediocre, which is why I went into it as an audiobook hoping that I would be able to finish it because it's 480 pages, and I don't think also I would have finished it if it weren't for the audiobook, but I still think this is the best one out of the 3 that I have read with that series. As always with him, I feel like the magic system, the world building was super interesting. It's always complicated to explain, but I enjoyed that. For example, the Nightmare Painter is literally someone that draws these nightmares that he's protecting the city from, and he for some reason likes to draw them as bamboo, which it's kind of his lazy way of doing it, and it's working. And there's this other woman who is essentially kind of a priest communicating with ghosts to use them to create this magic and help her people, and they kind of swap spots. Anyway, I enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the story, but for some reason, once again, I wasn't as invested as I wanted to be, and it's been the case, like I said, with every book in this series. I'm giving it 3 star because there's nothing bad about it, I just didn't love it as much as I was hoping for. The second book I'm giving 3 star to is A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. I have read like 5 of her books at this point, and like pretty much back to back, and I think I need a break. I have enjoyed her sense of humor, her world building. I enjoyed the balance again with the horror and like a little bit of modern sense of humor, but I think that this one was a letdown because I read it because a lot of you gave it 5 star, and unfortunately it was just kind of okay. It's probably one of her books that I liked the least because I felt like we weren't following the right characters. You're following this young girl who is the daughter of this evil sorceress, and she's trying to find a new husband. I found myself more invested in the older characters, especially Hester, although I didn't care for her romance story, and it just could have been so much more, and it just wasn't. I feel like I don't have that much to say about it. It was fine. And I have another book by her on my shelf, and I'm gonna wait because again, I have read too many, like 5 within a year, and I need a break. Frankly, was the most disappointing book that I read in January. And then the last 3 star book will be this one. This is The Mysterious Case of the Alperton Angels, which I think this is a really fun concept and format. I just don't think I'm the target audience. You have to be someone that likes crimes and cults a lot more than me, which I feel like there's a lot of people out there that are. So I feel like this is going to be exactly for you. So the author in general tends to write these books in, again, a weird format. In this case, the book starts by telling you that you are someone that opens this safe deposit box, and you will be presented with all of these emails and documents, and you have to be the one deciding if you're going to release the documents or if you're gonna just put them back in the box hidden away. So you're following the story of this woman who is trying to write a book about the Alperton Angels, so basically this cult that was telling people that they were angels. And then there was a mass murder event that happened, and 18 years later she's trying to write this book. And I appreciate that the author is really good at showing instead of telling, which a lot of authors would need to take some notes. So you figure out that the main character, the author, is not necessarily the best person ever, and you're discovering the story you know, again, through these emails, text messages, and I enjoyed it. But I'm just personally not as into cults and like crime novels in general. So again, I just don't think I was the right person for this book, but it was enjoyable and I would recommend it if you like those more than I do. So not a bad book. I rated 4 books 4-star. I'm telling you, just a really, really fantastic month. So the first one was this one right here, which is my second book by the author. You can tell I've been really trying to read more from the same authors, trying to find favorites. So this is The Island of Missing Trees, and this was really good. I feel like she tends to write more literary fiction than what I usually go for, with a hint of magical realism, which is usually not for me, but she does it in a way that is really good. Her prose is nice. She's very quotable. There are some chapters that are written from the point of view of a fig tree. So that's what I mean by a little bit of magical realism that may or may not be for you, but you're going back in time following these 2 timelines. You're following this couple that fall in love when they're very young on this island, and they're from different cultures, and you know, their parents obviously don't want them to be together, and then you're following them when they meet up again. And then the present time, which is set in the late 1910s, following their daughter, and her mother passed away. She's struggling. They're now in England, and things happen. I don't want to spoil it, but it's always super emotional with her. And at this point, I will read all of her books. You've convinced me. I actually read the first one because of you, 10 minutes and 38 seconds in this strange world. Her titles are always long, but I loved it. It was really good. I highly recommend her work in general. But yeah, this was a 4-star. I still think the other one is a bit better, but this was really solid. Next book I gave 4-star to is this one. This is A Torch Against the Night. This is the second book in the Ember in the Ashes series, which is a YA fantasy, which I don't read a ton of YA anymore, but I really fell in love with book 1 and I wanted to continue, and book 2 is still good. You still get those like love triangles and still love vibes, and I do think some of the characters are annoying me a little bit, but I'm really invested in the story and I need to know what's going to happen to them. And I did buy book 3, so like I feel like just there that tells you everything you need to know. But you're following, as always, this group of people that are oppressed by these other people. The girls from the people that are oppressed, the boys from the people oppressing, and as much as I like to tease this book and making fun of it a tiny bit, it's all in good humor because I am sucked into it. Okay, I've been reading, the 2 books are 450 pages. Both times I read it in 3 days, and I am sucked in. I will be continuing this series. I'm hoping I'm going to enjoy it as much as everyone else. Although I've heard mixed reviews for the rest of the series, I will be reading them and I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, this was really good. So 4-star, it deserves the hype. I'm not sure what happened to my copy, but I also gave 4-star to Assassin of Reality, which is the second book after Vita Nostra, which that series is so freaking weird, but I can't stop raving about it. It is fantasy, dark academia, magical school. The main female character in book 1 is forced to attempt these challenges by this stranger when she's on vacation with her mother, and he's forcing her to do those things that are just weird and she doesn't want to, but it's basically the entrance test to go to this magical school. But if she doesn't do it, horrible things are going to happen to the people she loves. So she keeps doing it, and then she gets to the school. Book 1 is the first 3 years. Book 2 is the 4th year, and things are still the same. However, I do think the magic system is starting to actually make sense now, because the end of book 1, I was still super confused, but I gave it 5 stars, so clearly I was invested. And yeah, nothing really changed. I still really enjoyed this one, and book 3 is being translated to English in June, so I will be reading it. I don't even know how else to explain this book, this series, because it is one of the weirdest things I've ever read. The writing is quite dense, but I need to continue. I need to know, and yeah, if you've read it, you know. It's just so strange, but if you get it, you get it. So highly recommend this series if you like, again, magical school, kind of dark academia vibes, and people being tortured. It's not gruesome, it's just really weird. So yeah, 4-star. Liked it a lot. The last book I gave 4-star to is Ultra Processed People: Why We Can't Stop Eating Food That Isn't Food. So this is a nonfiction, which I'm always super difficult in terms of books that talk about diet. I'm not here to preach anything, and I don't like to read from authors that do. And I appreciated that the author comes off very open about his own biases and how, like, he started this research with, like, no real ideas of what he was going to conclude or how he was going to conclude the book, and he just put himself through these experiments. There's a lot of data in the book, but because I listened to it as an audiobook, I thought it was very accessible. Actually, some portions are told like in a podcast format, and I just wanted to say that it was good, it was interesting, and if you're thinking maybe about changing your diet or just informing yourself about processed food, this was good. 4-star. Now let's talk about the 2 books I gave 5-star to. such a good month. I feel like last year I was struggling to find 5-star books, and these two were from the same reading vlog where I was reading your best books of last year. So I'm here to tell you, you have good taste. You have good taste. I appreciate it. So the first one, this one I was a bit more stressed because it's a horror book. And again, horror people tend to just in general be a little bit harsher or just be more picky. So the average rating I think is 3 point something on Goodreads, which Goodreads, anything under 4 stars is like terrible rating. And I gave it 5. So you have to know that I'm a big fan of sci-fi horror. I feel like anything mixed with sci-fi, usually I will like it. I don't want to tell you too much because you want to know basically nothing while you go into it, but you follow this couple, they bought this house, they're renovating it, and at the moment there's only one of them that is home. She's a little bit of a people pleaser, so whenever people that claim to have lived there in the past show up, their family, she kind of lets them in because she can't say no. And quickly the daughter of the man that used to live there goes into the basement, which like, who would do that? And she hides, and like things just get worse and worse and worse and weirder, and I loved it. I believe this was picked up to become a movie, which I'm so hopeful that it will be, because again, big fan of sci-fi movies, especially like the low budget ones, because the concepts are always super interesting. Like if you have any recommendations, I have enjoyed like Triangle or Coherence or like Cube, like anything like that. I go out of my way trying to find movies like that. So books too, please, if you have any recommendations. I feel like there's a bunch of theories going online about what's going on in here. And I think a few people were frustrated that you don't get all the answers, but I feel like I was satisfied, and that's usually one of my complaints with horror books. So loved it, 5-star, highly recommend if you are into these kind of concepts. So this was really good. I'm hoping the author will be writing more books, maybe about this, maybe not. Either way, I think this was a debut novel, which good job. So yeah, highly recommend it, 5-star. Second book I gave 5-star to was also one of your recommendations, and this is Slewfoot, A Tale of Bewitchery. I've mentioned in the past that I'm a huge fan of witches. However, the ones that are set kind of historical fiction during, I think it's the 1600s, during the Puritan times, I feel like they get a little boring or frustrating to read because obviously things are going to be a certain way. But whenever you add a layer of like female rage or revenge story, I'm in. And this was very satisfying. I think the only negative thing I have to say about it is that the cover, I don't know if you can tell, it's like matte. So everything shows and it's starting to peel, which like do not get the paperback. Do get the physical copy because the author draws his own pictures. And it was really helpful because he was describing these creatures as, for example, a fish with a child's face, which I was kind of confused. And then you see it and you're like, oh, that is what you mean. So this female character, her husband passes away, and unfortunately they were kind of renting to own this land from his brother. And of course, he doesn't want a woman to own the land. Sexist stuff happens, calls her a witch, things get worse and worse, and yeah, I do have to say, as always in these books and like the devil kind of vibes, you get a goat. And like goats are really creepy. Have you ever seen a goat in person? I feel like just the square pupil, I'm already gone. And then they act a certain way. Okay, they're sneaky. They like being high and like they freak me out. So I completely understand why back in the day people would call them the devil. I get it. But yeah, this was fantastic. I wasn't sure for a while. I was really frustrated, but like that's the point, right? And then stuff happens. Oh, disclaimer, there's a scene with a cat, which I have cats, I'm sensitive to, but I do think things made sense. I didn't feel like any of this was gratuitous. It made sense with the story. And yeah, I'm looking forward to reading more by the author. If you have favorites, please. I checked, and he has a couple other ones. And again, I'm assuming he's going to do the drawing for all of them. Yes. So 5-star, highly recommend it. Like I mentioned in the intro, I did give up on 3 books, which I'm trying to learn to not force myself to finish a book when I'm not feeling it. And I feel like it's helping not to get into a reading slump, but it's still, ongoing process. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Defiant, which this one was really, really painful. This is the last book in this series, the Skyward series, which is a YA sci-fi, first contact with aliens. And Brandon Sanderson is known for his crazy endings, but I couldn't stand, what's her name? I even forgot her name. How did I manage that? Spencer, there you go. I couldn't stand her anymore. Book 1, it made sense that she was very angsty. Again, it's a YA book. She went through a lot. But book 4, she's still really annoying and I couldn't stand it anymore. And it doesn't help that I hated book 3 and then the 2 novellas that I read out of the 3 that are there. and I gave up. I gave up, which again feels awful because it's the last book. It feels so weird to like give up on the last book, but I can't do it. So again, I'm trying to just respect that feeling and not force myself. So there's that. We're just going to move on. Feel good productivity, which is only 6 hours, but I'm giving up at 36% because I'm not feeling it. Okay. I think the author is a YouTuber, so I'm not going into it knowing anything about him. I just feel like I'm getting to a point where I get a little sensitive with self-help books that tend to give me this toxic positivity vibe. And I don't think this is what the author meant to do at all, but I feel like sometimes these kind of self-help book can make it feel like, oh, if you're positive, things are going to go better, which like, it's kind of the vibe I was getting. So I decided, you know what? Why would I be, hate reading it for no reason? Maybe it gets better. It doesn't really matter. I'm just moving on. So no hard feelings. And the last one I gave up on is What You're Looking For Is in the Library, which is a Japanese translation. And I've mentioned that for some reason, the writing feels really dry when translated to English, and I feel just not emotionally connected to the story. But I really love these stories that are centered around libraries, bookstores, books in general. I think we can probably all relate. And this one is divided in multiple little short stories. I like the first one. These people are trying to find themselves, go to the library, and this person is giving them tips and it changes their life. So it's very much like a cozy, feel-good kind of story. And like I said, I like the first one. And then we got to the second story and it was really annoying me. I found it really grating. The main character is trying to find himself. He's in a relationship with a 10-year-old a girl that is 10 years younger, and I just didn't like the vibe, so I decided once again, let's just put it down. It doesn't matter. Don't force yourself. So no hard feelings, but I put it down 33% into it. Well, maybe a little bit of hard feelings, but it's fine. It's fine. Lastly, let's talk about the 2 books that I'm currently reading. Let's keep going with the audiobook because I'm almost done with All in Her Head, The Truth and Lies Early Medicine Taught Us About Women's Body and Why It Matters Today. I have read a lot of books at this point on this topic, but I think this is a really fun balance between the history of medicine centering the female body and then what it is today. The author is a doctor and she is in contact with people and she kind of is mixing both, and it's difficult, frustrating, but I think it's a really important topic. And a few things so far has really stuck with me. Some of the stuff that happened in the past is like funny how horrible it is, and she talks about how hysteria is now anxiety. We can all relate. But the fact that she was mentioning how she would see patients that have cancer and these women would apologize for like everything, and like I'm Canadian, I apologize a lot, but the fact that we feel the need to apologize because, oh, I'm not looking good, I'm this, I'm that, and it's like, that's crazy. You're dying of cancer or like fighting cancer right now. Like this is not, no. So I really appreciated her point of view. And if you're looking to learn more on a topic, I would recommend this one. I do think this is one of the best ones I have read. And last but not least, I just started this one and I'm dying to talk about it. This is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. This is going to be my 4th book by him. And witches, yes, please. You're following these girls who are underage, got pregnant in the 70s, and they're sent to this home to be hidden away until they give birth before they can go back to their normal life without the baby. And it seems to be kind of awful, as you would expect. And they will be getting a book. I'm not there yet. I'm assuming someone's going to give them this book, but they get their hands on a book and they start doing magic. And I'm waiting for this. I'm waiting for this. So yes, so far, really good. And it will be part of my next reading vlog. And so good. I already know. I would love to hear your thoughts on these books if you've read them, and find out in the comment section what are the best books you've read in January. I will be putting on the screen my February TBR because I have some great plans for next month I'm really excited about, and I will see you then. Bye.